morning, and thank you to Ashley and JFM for allowing me to speak and inviting me to speak today. Firstly, let me thank you for the opportunity in inviting me here today to stand among such wonderful men and women who have survived and dodged so many difficult hurdles that life has thrown at them down through the years. Despite this, you have all risen above like a phoenix from the flames, standing tall and standing together, no matter what. Politics is for politicians, and we should not let that creep in and divide our various support groups. We, as survivors, should remain branded together as one, in the immortal words of "United we stand, divided we fall."
I can't hear you.
Yeah, we're out. You go right up to your
I'd now like to ask you all to just close your eyes and bring yourself back to being a 14-year-old boy or girl. Let me tell you a story. When I was a young teen, I was asked by a doctor did I want to break away from home to a place where girls my own age could carry on my schooling and get help for their problems they were experiencing at home. Well, I jumped at it, imagining visions of St. Trinian's type place in my head, and landed myself in Green on Hyde Park. Schooling never happened for me, but did for others, not many mind you. The change in my life was unimaginable. I went from living at home to barred windows, heavy work, inadequate meals, little medical interventions, and no lessons in life skills. I now lived with the ever-present fear of being sent here to show McDermot Street, and never getting out, as one nun used to tell me almost every single night. So, off I was, down to the laundry. The whole atmosphere of the heat, the noise, was terrifying to me. So much happened to me while I was there. Fast forward now to the present time. Thank God for Google, because this is where I found Professor James Smith. Through him, I made contact with a wonderful young lady called Maeve, JFM, and Mary, who became my lifesavers. I knew nothing of the fight they had been waging against the Catholic Church and the Department of Justice, and I wanted to become part of their cause if they would include me. Being half Cork, a rebel, thankfully they included me, and I became a rebel with a cause. Justice for all survivors then, regardless. And in the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, never allow a person to tell you no who doesn't have the power to say yes. So with advice and support, I was up and running again, and this time I found a firm of legal eagles to take our case pro bono, i.e. that was for free. Finally, and after many emails, a lovely man by the name of Gareth Noble of K.O.D. Lines took on the case with his fabulous team, Susie, Wendy, Stephen, and the big hitting barristers Michael and Colin. What a team, guys. This band of human rights legal eagles make. They are A1. I then made contact with a few of the girls, and on a wing and a prayer, as some I had not met nor spoken to in years, I asked them to trust me and take a leap of faith. I was asking an awful lot after all. Thank God they said yes, and one by one, they made their way to KOD. So now we had our Green On girls and our Legal Eagles teams. We hit the ground running. Much has happened since then for myself. I was pressurised to drop my case against the nuns and the state by the solicitors for the nuns. And on advice, I was asked to drop my case because the statute of limitations might apply. But the nuns wanted the whole case dropped, a clear indication of collusion of religious and state in my view. I stood my ground and would not drop my case against the state. Enough said, as I think you all know what I mean. We also had a High Court case recently brought against the Department of Justice, and after almost 4 years of extreme stress and strain on the ladies involved, the High Court delivered its judgment on the 28th of July and found in their favour. Alas, unfortunately, survivors are still having to fight for justice. Much of the Magdalene scheme supports are not in place for survivors. Many have problems with social welfare, whose staff are ignorant of survivors' entitlements, and as such forcing them to go through hoops, and in some instances refusing them benefits, thereby causing them even more stress. The HSE are no better. We have instances where the designated person wasn't even aware that their job remit had been changed to liaise with survivors, or still, the named officer printed in the booklet given was incorrect. The medical cards fall far short of what was expected and are now of no use to many survivors abroad. Why can't the government make some arrangement with VHI, for example, to give top plan cover for those abroad? After all, what medical cover is in place for all of our embassy staff across the globe? Bet they are not left on trolleys or on long waiting lists for medical attention, whatever their ailment may be. So I hope our story will give you all hope and encouragement to fight on for yourselves and all survivors regardless of where they were, and to speak out and not be afraid or ashamed. Do not let your past histories define you, and you did nothing wrong. The wrongs were done to you by the state, their agents and society at large. That said, I feel the time has come to allow healing. We owe that to ourselves. Part of healing must be our inclusion in the decisions in relation to how we want this part of our history and Ireland's social history to be remembered. In my view, it was Ireland's own Holocaust. Why not have a date set aside in the calendar when this country remembers all of the women, those who have died and the babies, and those who are still alive and bearing the scars, some physical but many mentally. Also, I feel we should be consulted on the memorial by the relative bodies, for instance, Dublin City Council. This has to be survivor-led at the very least. They could invite a few survivors onto whatever committee they put in place. Finally, I would call on the Department of Justice to open a direct dialogue with survivors on how long more we must wait for the full implementation of the correct report, and at least do us the courtesy of asking us what our greatest needs are. We can't speak for ourselves, and not to be given a chance is very insulting, to say the least. We too can get around a table and talk, just as it was done by all sides to bring about peace and reconciliation in the Good Friday Agreement. It will be advisable for the government to remember that they cannot censor our memories, which is the truth of what happened in these laundries across this country. Not the Magdalene report, which was, in my view, quite a whitewash. Nor can they block our freedom of speech, which is protected under the 1937 Constitution of Ireland. They would do well to remember there are many of us who are in our early 40s and 50s who will take up the fight for justice. All we are asking for is that justice be done and be seen to be done. We should be showing an example to the wider world that we as a country have grown up and can admit the wrongs of the past, and more importantly, right those wrongs. I would like to finish off with another of Eleanor's quotes, which I think is quite appropriate to this country. Anyone who knows history, particularly the history of Europe, will, I think, recognise that the domination of education or government by any one religious faith is never a happy arrangement for the people. Sometimes I wonder if we will ever grow up in our politics and say definite things which mean something, or whether we shall always go on using generalities which everyone can subscribe to and which have very little meaning. Thank you.
I was in the industrial school at the age of 2 in Clifton. They were overcrowded. They put me into Ballinasloe in Galway. I was there till I was 16 and a half, 17. Then we went out scramping apples one night, 5 of us, and the next morning I was told, O'Connor, you're going up to an institution in Dublin. My institution was my downfall. They brought me up to Hyde Park. I was 17 years of age. I went in there, and you have no, as Lindsay said, you know about the work that was done there. It was absolutely diabolical. I was 17. I was pulling big sheets, big towels, big coats, shirts, everything out of washing machines, hand washing shirts, everything. We got little or no food. We were praying all the time, and I never knew when it was our birthdays. We never knew when it was Christmas. Nobody had any idea when it was Christmas or our birthdays. We weren't allowed to speak to one another, make friends with one another, or anything. So then, if you did anything wrong, you were put down in the hole. We used to call it the hole. It was a room 4, 6 by 6 or something, and you got your hair cut to the bone. I had mine done because I was very much a rebel. And my reason for going to Hyde Park was not for stealing an apple, because I was a ward of the court put into the institution, into the industrial school, and they couldn't do anything about it until I was 16. And then I was put up, and all I did, my reason for going there, because I hit a nun with a hockey stick across the face.
Good girl.
And that's what I was sent there for, not for stealing an apple, as they told me I was put there for. We had no food, we had no doctors, we had no education. We had no eyes, we never got our eyes tested, our teeth tested. And when I came over here at the age of 31, I had 31 years of age, and I came back over to England. And the first thing I had to do was get all my teeth out and blind in one eye. And that's because I didn't know what a toothbrush looked like, a bar of soap. We had in the dormitories, we had 5 big dormitories. Don't tell me that the dormitories had curtains around them, because they had not when I was there. I went in the 40s when it was the worst time of all. If I had been a bit older, I might have got away with a little bit more. However, I got away with as much as I could. But we had a tin basin beside our bed with a locker, and that's all we had, and a tap of cold water for 30 people in one dormitory. We had 5 dormitories, 30 people in one dormitory, and we had a locker beside our bed with a tin basin, a cold tap, and that was the way we had to wash ourselves. We had no bathrooms, we had nothing in them laundries. How we survived today, I do not know. I'm 86 now, and I'm still getting on with it, and I'm still fighting them, and I'm still fighting them. For all the women that are here and left, for all the women in the Magdalene Laundries that can't speak for themselves and didn't get any money, I will represent them as long as there's breath in my body. Good girl!
14 years she spent here, and when I went to go to look for her, her papers and things, where she was staying here for 14 years, I was told that there was a known that my mother wasn't there, because my mother's name was changed. She was called Regina. My mother's name was Mary, but when they came in here, all the ladies' names were changed, and I had a problem looking for her papers. And when I did go to find out about it, whoever I was talking to on the phone told me that there was one nun who knew everyone that was in this place here. And I was looking for Mary, but her name was Regina, so this is where the problem stood. And I got the thing back with a piece of paper with all the ladies' names on this sheet of paper, but it was all blocked out. All their names were blocked out in big, so you wouldn't see whose names was there. That's fair enough. But my mother's name was Mary on one side, and she was Regina on the other side of the paper. And she spent 14 years here. I came here to meet her here when I was 16 years of age, and when I came to the door, I always remember the railings and the front of the building, that's all. But my gran, who took me here to see my mother, I didn't know I was coming to see my mother here in Gloucester Street, and she wasn't here. So the nun was talking to my gran and said, obviously she was talking about my mother, who I didn't know. She was sent to Donnybrook, so she spent nearly a year there as well. So she would have been 15 years also in the laundries. And when I went to go to meet her in Donnybrook, she came down the steps, she just sat down. My mother never spoke. I didn't know it was my mother until I came back out from the buildings, and I said to my gran, "Who's that woman?" And she said, "That was your mother." And all my mother was doing was crying. She had her 2 hands, she was like a zombie. She never spoke. She looked just unbelievable. I was so scared. I was scared to see her the way she was. And it was only after that my granny said it was my mother, and it affected me a lot. My mother died, she said, now about 25 years. She died, she was only just 60 years of age, and she had a tumour on her lung. And the doctor told me in the Mater Hospital, it was obviously something to do with the chemicals in the laundries,
The free labour that we did for them from 7 in the morning till 9 at night. And I did the laundry. And they said the mother and baby home, they were all the same. Mother is the same as the Magdalene. We were treated like dirt. The name was changed. I was called you because they couldn't think of a name for me. But I answered to you. But I'll tell you one thing, I stood up for many a woman in there, and I took many a hiding in it, and they tried to drown me in the bat. But by God, I got back up and I pulled her in there, because I wouldn't be standing here now to be able to tell the tale and tell the truth. And they used to send the women to sign on as well. Oh yeah, they were accompanied. even though they were being subsidised by the state. Well, all the corruption that went on with them, I want it all out. And as well as the cops turned a blind eye to an awful lot that went on in there. I knew a little one that was 12 years of age. Last March I was at the Magdalene Flowers in Glasnevin when I was with yourself, and I discovered that one of our women who was 12 years of age, who was in the mother and baby home St. Patrick's, she was expecting twins at 12. And she was either interfered with by the father or the brother, and the family just threw her in there and left her there. Yeah. Now, so what happened was I got out before her, and it wasn't until I was at the flowers, the laying of the flowers for the Magdalenes and for the babies and for the children that's buried out there in unmarked graves, disrespecting us. I say this, that I found out that little one, her name was called out, and I heard her name being mentioned. It nearly killed me. I wrote a poem as well, and I'm going to recite it for all of us, dedicated to us. I wrote 2 poems. I wrote one for June, especially for Captain Corliss, who really fought the fight to bring out, to open the can of worms for all Ireland, because this happened everywhere. And I'm delighted to be here to stand up. But by God, they gave us a memory that will never ever leave us. They scarred us, but by God, they never killed me. Lucky enough, I'm still here. And my strength will keep me going to fight for justice, truth and redress, and to give the Magdalenes, all those that weren't given anything. And as well as that, to see that Caranua, I think they should be sacked for what they're doing. It's Christine Buckley, the Lord of Mercy on her, stood outside that trial and fought to get the rights for everybody. She fought for them to get the award, which was granted. And this lot was elected, come in and chosen, who didn't even wear the shoes. They never wore their shoes. But this lot went in there and said, we can do this and we can do that. And to have a human being come up and ask for a bed if they needed one. Why do you want it? And what happened to you? I said to her back in the institution. I said to her back in the laundries. Well, I say this, they awarded themselves with the wages. The state should have been paying them their wages. The state, and I'll say it and I'll keep saying it. And they gave themselves pensions also. And it's disgusting. And fancy officers. I mean, all they had to do was to go into the Aslyum. Was that not good enough for them that Christine got for them?
There's another
was
lady
it?
here who's in
Okay.
direct provision, and she's going to
Okay.
speak now. She's currently in direct provision.
Right, so
She went through what you're going to
Okay,
do.
no.
She's going to speak now.
Okay.
When I ran out of Hyde Park, I ran up to the Archbishop's Palace, and when I went in there to get something and food and a bed for the night, he raped me, and that's how I ended up in the mother and baby home. So I did my rounds of the Magdalene Laundries and the mother and baby homes. I can assure you I did.
I don't know where to start from because I just got a bit of emotion, you know. This is real, you know. This is what you see, things are getting out of hand. And my situation might be a bit different from the women, but we have similarities in a lot of things. I had many words to say this morning. I've never come in contact with many women who spend the institutionalized of Magdalene Laundries, being me myself as a woman living in direct provision, and she just touched me because you become that, you know, you just want to talk, even when you go and see a psychology and they tell you that, you know, it's very hard, but you have to carry on. You just don't know what to do. You really don't know what to do. and people become vegetables, people become aggressive, and people, things can get out of control. Like what I've just seen here, I've just been, demoralized. But anyway, let's get on. This is what all of us, we are crying for. There is no reason for the government to create these institutions and keep people like us in these buildings. They might be a bit different with direct provision, and people might hear about direct provision of all these people. They have a roof over their head, they have food every day, or they have medical cards, but that's the story on the paper. Inside this institution, the life is very different. People are dying inside, dying, and real people are committing suicide. And for sure, this is not the thing that the Irish government should keep on repeating. We are glad that we've met these women, which they are giving us first-hand information. Why would you lock a woman for years and not even knowing her own name, and you give her a tractor? Yeah, that's why she became a tractor. You become strong, and when you become strong, you start retaliating in a very different way. And then these are the people who are going to live in our societies. We are going to live in these communities. No matter how long the government can decide or can want to lock us in, can even want to keep us away from the communities, but we will become a community. We shouldn't be judged because people are running and seeking for safety. Because all what people want is to live a normal life and get on with their lives. And there are many of us who we really want to make Ireland the best place for everyone by even contributing and doing meaningful things in the society. But the government just refuses that to give to people. And if the Irish government can do this to its own people, I'm so scared that what I'm seeing is not a strange thing that has just come and being imposed on direct provision, but this is in the blood of the Irish system. And we are the people who can end it, and you are the people who can do it, and not even let this useless act being repeated and repeated on the human beings. Because there was Magdalene Laundry, and now there is direct provision, and there will be another institution. This is not going to end. But we are the people to stop this act, to say to the government that no, this is not right, in regardless of our color, in regardless of our languages, in regardless of where we are and what is our background. But in regarding of creating an island, which is a very peaceful space, where we can create it of all of us to live in that country with a meaningful and with a purpose. We should start taking these topics, taking these subjects on an individual level. We shouldn't even act because of how our neighbor are acting. But I think we can always, people are taught to hate, and we can taught each other to love. And the more we can come together as communities, and the more we can defeat the government and start making the right decisions and right choices upon us, every Irish citizen living in here. We might be living in direct provision. They might tell you we are asylum seekers, we are refugees. But one thing for sure that people have to get it right. Don't even deceive this government. These people are still given leave to remain refugee status and are still residing in Ireland. And if we are denying one another, these people are not going anywhere. We are not going anywhere. And the best we can do is to start trying to know one another, living together, and create a best Ireland, and not let the government divide us. I'm sorry, I know I lost my speech because that woman just made me total emotion, but this is what I had to tell you guys this afternoon. Thank you very much.